hobbies I've been turning to instead of scrolling through my phone. The more I've been doing my hobbies, the more I'm reconnecting with myself, my inner child, and little me, and I just feel so much better and more grounded and more productive. I hope that these hobbies will inspire you to try new hobbies as well. I'm going to start with yoga because it's my biggest hobby personally, and I think it's relatively easy to get into. It can be higher impact and higher energy if you're doing a vinyasa flow or ashtanga yoga, but it can also be really, really gentle, really, really soothing, and really, really restorative. When it comes to hobbies, I'm talking specifically about the asana practice of yoga, the movement portion of it. While you can do it at a studio or at a gym, so you can also do this at home. You can roll out your mat and dedicate as little as 5 minutes to it if that's all that you have time for. You can easily find somebody to guide you through the practice on YouTube or just come up with your own flow. I love going to yoga studios because I like the social aspect, but I also do a lot of yoga at home, rolling out my mat at the park with friends or friends of friends. But the point is, like, it doesn't have to be that big. It can be big. It's also something that you can easily do at home or by yourself. One way to integrate it as more of a hobby as well for me is to try to learn key poses, whether that's headstand, crow pose, etc. Give yourself a little challenge to accomplish and see what you can do, or simply use it as a moment to relax and a moment to give back to yourself. Another hobby, journaling. This to me feels like there's a really low barrier of entry. I actually have a whole journaling video that I will go ahead and pop up somewhere on the screen. Journaling can be so simple. You don't even need a journal. You probably have one somewhere at your house, a notebook or journal, but you really don't need one. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. Lately, I'm doing a lot of what's called stream of consciousness journaling, where you just journal whatever thought comes into your head and put it on paper. Sometimes I like to journal pretty things, little stories, little poems. It could be anything. Quotes. I will write down quotes from books and stuff into my journal. Sometimes I'm exploring more complex topics in my journal and just formulating what my thoughts and opinions are on them. And then other times it is really simple. There are also plenty of journal prompts in existence if you need a little something or motivation to get you writing. In the journaling video, I do include some prompts. You can also just write like little short stories and creative writing. Jewelry making / making jewelry. I love using my hands to make things. I feel like this is a really good way to just incorporate slower living into the world, and then you get to wear it. I feel like I should be wearing jewelry I made in this video, but I'm not. But if you've been here before, I do wear stuff that I've made. I admittedly get most of my inspiration for jewelry off Pinterest. I'm trying to become inspired in other ways. Sometimes I get the inspiration just by going to the bead store and looking at what kind of beads they have. Right now, I'm really into trying to use natural materials to make jewelry. But that being said, some other fun and creative ways to make your own jewelry can be going to the thrift store, finding jewelry that's already in existence and kind of deconstructing it to make your own, or taking apart jewelry that you don't wear anymore and remaking it. A lot of time when I'm at the store, I will kind of investigate the jewelry up close and see how it's made. I own a ton of beads, bought too many at one point. I would almost say the amount of beads I have makes it harder to create. I feel like the less that I have in front of me, the easier it is to sit down and come up with a vision. When I am making the jewelry, I'm pretty much just crafting or beating it together. I'm not like physically welding the steel, not metalworking, not metal smithing, although that's a hobby idea too if you want to get into it. It feels like a collage. If you've ever made collage art and you have all these different images or materials and you're putting them together and rearranging them to see what works. That's what I feel like making jewelry is like. Have your chain or your beads and you're moving stuff around to see where it works best and then putting it all together. I also find it really fun to make jewelry for friends. It's a really great custom gift to give. Sewing, mending, upcycling. Mending is probably the easiest, and I feel like everybody has something in their wardrobe that could be mended, especially if you thrift. Like sometimes you bring stuff home from the thrift store and it just needs to be mended off jump. Usually when I'm mending, I'm sewing by hand. Usually I'm just like stitching holes back together or reapplying a button or something else that came off of a garment. Sewing is a little bit more challenging for me, but it's a lot of fun. I do have a sewing machine, but you can totally hand sew too. It's fun to kind of see the vision come to life. Sometimes frustrating and sometimes fun, but I think that these hand skills are so important to have, especially in a world where things like this are becoming a lost art. I love upcycling too. It could be dyeing clothes, it could be patching clothes, it could be tearing something apart and putting it back together, but it's a really fun way, especially if you thrift, but even if you don't thrift, which I would ask why you don't thrift, because everybody could be thrifting something. I'm not saying you have to thrift everything that you buy, but everybody could be thrifting something. It's just a great way to have your own unique spin on your wardrobe. It's a great way to consume less, because when you're making your clothes, like, you just have new stuff. You're taking stuff in your closet and making it new, so you don't always have to be out buying the next biggest trend. I think it's also a really good way to get more in tuned to your own sense of style and sense of fashion, because you kind of have to push your own creative boundaries a little bit more than if you were to just go to the store and buy an outfit as it's already put together. Baking and cooking, really. Are they the same? I don't know. I feel like I'm either in the mood to bake or cook. I'm typically not in the mood to do both. And there's different things that I get out of them. They both slow me down. Baking is a lot more by the books. Typically, you have to follow the recipe fairly closely or the consistency won't come out right. But what's really fun about baking is it's easy to give people sweet treats. I love giving. One of my love languages is gifts. People just get so happy when you give them a cake or some cookies. Showing up to the dinner party with the dessert is a good feeling. My two favorite things to bake lately are healthy cookies. The base is just rolled oats and ripe bananas, and then you can add whatever you want to them. So I'll usually do like dark chocolate chips, a little honey to make it sweeter, hemp seeds for some protein. You can add dried berries, literally whatever. I like baking that because it feels really nourishing. I make this really, really good strawberry cake, and then I recently started making this cardamom cake, and it's a loaf cake. I'm the type of person who doesn't like overly sweet or overly decadent things. For example, I don't like fudge because it's just too sweet. So my baking tends to be a little more on the fluffy side, or recently I made bread. That was fun. I don't know if fluffy side was the right word. Not overkill on the sweetness. I feel like the difference with cooking, you don't have to follow the recipe. I will usually loosely follow a recipe, but then I almost always veer off in some way or another. I'm also the type, when I cook, I don't always want to have to go to the store to get X, Y, and Z for the recipe. And I feel like with baking, you kind of have to, but with cooking, you can really get away with substituting a lot of the stuff for stuff that you may already have. I've been making these Marry Me chickpeas. A lot of time I will discover some of my recipes on the internet, but what I've been doing is actually writing them down onto recipe cards. That way I don't have to go back and scroll in order to find a recipe, because we're trying not to doom scroll over here, okay? But I've also just found that prepping food and chopping vegetables, which is something that I used to hate, now it really forces me to just slow down, and I truly enjoy it. Reading. I'm surprised this wasn't number one on my list, because this has probably reduced my screen time more than anything else. I read a lot. I do read slowly though. I feel like it takes me longer to get through most of my books than everybody around me. But to be fair, I'm usually reading multiple at the same time. So I like to have both a fiction and nonfiction book going at one time. Then I also have my audiobook that I listen to when I'm driving in the car. I typically read before bed. I actually don't even bring my phone into my bedroom at night. And then I also like to bring a book with me. So if I have any downtime where I'm waiting for something, instead of grabbing my phone and scrolling while I wait, I will just read while I wait. I'm not going to go too into book recommendations because I feel like this video would just expand into an hours long video. But if you want more book recs, let me know. Nature walks. Could be any walks. I like to walk amongst the trees, but I don't always walk amongst the trees. Sometimes I walk around my neighborhood. Sometimes I do city walks. walks. But my favorite type of walk is on a forest trail. And I feel like these type of walks can be a little bit more time consuming, which makes them feel more hobby-ish. The more I'm outside, especially in nature, the less I want to be on my phone because there's so many other things to look at. A stroll through a park, even. You can people watch. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so we happen to have parks that are gorgeous with big old trees everywhere. But if you don't have that, you can literally people watch, and it's good for your health too, physical and mental. Caring for my plants. I have a patio, so I mostly have house plants. I do have a few little patio plants though. My mom has a garden that I like to visit. I would be lying if I said that I was tending to the plants there. I pretty much tend to the plants in my home right now, but I love it. My favorite is repotting because I like touching soil. This is a random fact, but when I was like 2 or 3, I was stealing spoons and eating like spoonfuls of soil. And come to find out, I had low iron. I still have low iron, but taking care of my plants feels so grounding, and it feels so nice to be able to walk into my house and see them, and just so rewarding. Honorable mention to the money tree that I'm sitting next to. Make some art. Painting and drawing are my main form of art that I like to dive into. When I was younger, I would draw and paint all the time. Even as a teenager, I carried a sketch pad around with me and I would draw little fairies and mermaids and mushrooms and foresty things like that. And then I stopped because I listened to all the voices in my head and the world and social media talk about how you have to be good. And here's the thing, you don't have to be good. I typically don't show a lot of my art because I don't feel like I'm very good at it. More and more I'm working on just letting whatever wants to flow through, flow onto the paper. I do feel like I'm getting more confident in my art. Shocking, the more you practice, the more confident you get. But it took a lot of kind of reconciling with myself and letting go of the attachment to the outcome to be able to re-immerse myself in art, which is something that I always loved. I love doing art outside. I do little art pieces in my journal. It's fun, it's relaxing, and it's meditative. This goes not just for the art, like really any of the things I've talked about. The more you do them, the better you'll get to. Your skill will increase. That's not the goal. We don't need to be skilled. We're allowed to just exist and just do things to do things. But it is cool to watch the skills kind of unfold. Another hobby, paddleboarding. Have I tried paddleboarding yet? No, but I'm going to. 2 days from now, I am scheduled to go paddleboarding for the first time, and I am really excited. This is one that might be kind of regionally specific. We have a lot of lakes where I live, so paddleboarding is kind of abundant and a common hobby. I'm really excited. Hobbies can be something you've never tried. Why not try? If it doesn't feel good to you, you don't have to keep going. Life is too short to spend hours a day scrolling on our phones, hours a week. I don't know how much time it adds up to, but just think of how much time we might spend on our phones in this life. We don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be good at any of these hobbies. It's just about trying and doing something new, giving your time to something that will bring you back to yourself. If any of these hobbies spoke to you, I'd love to know in the comments. Also, share your favorite hobby below. I love hobbies. I'm always trying to discover and try something new. I want to know what you all are up to. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope to see you in the next video.